you're on.
All right, we're back here with the Doctor's Corner with Dr. Kline and Dr. Linda Cheek. Sorry about the audio issue there. If anybody that wanted to call in, please call back in at 415-403-2715. And Dr. Kline, as you were saying.
Well, I'll go quickly so we can have some callers. First of all, the DEA police are police, and they operate from the prosecutors. Prosecutors are federal DA, federal Justice Department prosecutors. So let's not blame everything on the DEA. We need to talk to the Attorney General of the United States. He is in charge, whoever it is. And we need to sit down with them and say, we're doctors. You don't know what you're doing. You're making medical mistakes. You're assuming that too much opiates is causing addiction, and that's not true. You need to get the facts. And we need to talk about your responsibility when you close down doctors without dragging them and finding them guilty. What happens to their patients? No doctor's practice should be closed unless there is egregious criminal activity. Egregious. Until something is put in place to help the patients. When patients are abruptly taken off their medicines, no one will fill their prescriptions. Believe me, no one. They have no choice but to either lie in bed sick or kill themselves or go on the streets. And I have a patient who was spending thousands of dollars a month to get oxycodone at $30 a tablet to help with her pain. They mortgaged their house. The husband felt that he was not going to let his wife suffer. And she had and has a terrible disease, which was just recently operated on, a rare disease that caused her years of agony, and no one would treat her. So she went on the street. Those are the choices people have. I think it's time that we educate the Attorney General of the United States personally, and we start talking about what to do when a doctor's practice is going to be closed short of gross criminal activity to protect the patients. These are citizens. And you know what? 3% of the population takes long-term medicine. And 3% of the population has 2 or 3 other friends, family. That's 6% of the population. Politicians need to know that 6% of the population can throw elections. Elections are won by 1%. So we're starting a new campaign now. Pain Patients Vote. Pain Patients Vote. So, Linda, what are your thoughts about? Let's turn the issue around and say we do our forgiveness thing, and we say that the Attorney General and the police think they are doing the right thing. They actually believe they're helping, but they have the wrong medical information. So do you think that's worth pursuing, that we sit down with the DEA and with the assistant attorney, district attorneys, and even, the boss, if they have one currently, and start to say, wait a minute, we're doctors. You're messing around with the practice of medicine here, and you don't know what you're doing. Or do you think I'm an idiot?
Having been a victim of the attack and
Linda?
having been through... Yeah, can you hear me?
Are you there?
No, can you hear me? Yes, I'm here.
Brian?
Can you hear me?
There we go. Okay, I can hear you now.
Well,
okay, go ahead, Linda.
Can you hear me without the echo?
Yes.
Okay.
Having been a victim of this, I think that you're kind of seeing things through rose-colored glasses, Dr.
Oh,
Kline.
darn.
Not to sound so negative, but I believe that there is actually a method to their madness, and it's a planned madness, and it's been going on for 100 years, and it's still going on, and it's all follow the money, and I don't think, just as a modern example, 10 years ago, or actually 11 years ago, all of what you just said was pointed out to the government at a Senate hearing that Siobhan Reynolds was a testifier to. She gave her testimony, and she said everything basically that you've said in the course of your talking, that to the government. And what has happened in the last 11 years? They totally ignored Siobhan's testimony. In fact, they murdered Siobhan. And we are exactly where we were 11. We're actually exactly where we were 20 years ago. No different. It's just that more doctors are being incarcerated and more pain patients are being thrown to the street, because that's the agenda. It's my personal belief that I think there is an evil agenda in our government, and talking to them will do no good. Just from my own personal experience, I was like you were talking about. I had the Medicare people and Medicaid people ask for my records. The third year in a row, they always ask for them in January, when you're the most busy in Northern Virginia, in the Virginia area, because of colds and flu and so on. Ask you to put together 50 records and send them to them. And I finally, after the third year in a row, I queried them and said, why do you keep asking me for my records? What's wrong? What are you looking for? And their reply was, oh, nothing. This is just a routine, random thing that it just happened that your name came up randomly. Well, that was a bunch of you know what, because then 2 years later, I am rated on the auspice of Medicare fraud, but they only use that as a door opener, because any doctor in this country, from pediatrics to geriatrics, can be rated based on, quote, Medicare fraud. And of course, they didn't find anything pertaining to my pain management. And I was one of the silly doctors who believe, well, if I take a plea and they haven't found anything wrong, all of this will be history. And so I did. I took a plea, even though I was innocent, and ended up being able to get my license back again. But I was still a target. They wanted me out of there. And so, you know, I can see the evil, and also the DEA. When you ask the DEA a question, I actually had, in the early part of my practice, when I first started treating pain, I set up an evening once a month where I tried to bring together law enforcement, doctors, government, and I actually served a meal and gave a speech and had different people talk. And I had the government investigator, so to speak. He's not DEA, but he was the criminal investigator of the area, would come to our office. One time a DEA agent did come, and he actually said to the group, and as they say everywhere, anytime they talk, they said it again last year when I was at the FDA meeting in Silver Spring, as long as you are treating patients legitimately, you have nothing to worry about. And that is a flat out lie. So that's just my personal opinion, but you know what we can do with opinions, right?
It was Negroes. He used the term Negroes were running off with white women that were doped up with dope. And it worked. He got his funding increased. And then he was a real, honest to goodness zealot. He believed in what he was doing. So how do we deal with the federal government when the executive branch, like the DEA and the attorney generals, get out of hand? Well, we have a Congress. And the Congress actually is in charge of the executive branch because they hold the purse strings. So whenever a congressman calls a federal agency, they all quake in their boots because they know they can get their budget cut if they don't play ball. So I think we need to make an intense effort to get to our Congress and have them figure it out. Well, that's why we've come up with the new term, pain patients vote. There's a huge voting block out there, and when politicians learn they got 5% or 6% of the population, that all they got to do is mention the word protect pain refugees, and he'll jump up and down and get all the votes, all of them. This is a political issue that can deliver 100% of the votes. It's not like hog farming, where you get a few hog farmers and a lot of people that don't agree. There's 100% of people who agree with any efforts to stop the horror of these forced taperings. I don't care who started them or what a bunch of idiots they are. We need to do something about it. And you know what? Legislators are problem solvers. They problem solve in their own way. It's a mistake to think that you go to your local legislator and have to bring solutions. No. They want to hear what your problems are, and then they will figure it out in their own way. They're the experts. It's like going to a lawyer or going to a doctor. You go to a politician, and what do? They figure out a way to solve the problem their way. They know how it works. They know how the system works. And they will think of things. But first, you have to identify the problem. They have to believe that it involves a lot of voters. Not just you, but people need to start pointing out that 3% of the population takes long-term drugs. 68%, 2/3 of those are being taken off. So in North Carolina, there's 300,000 people on continuous opiates for their rare painful diseases. 200,000 of them have already been taken off or tapered or in agony or killing themselves. So when you bring up these numbers, and then you got their family, so you double it, you bring these numbers up with your legislator, and they're going to listen. And I'm going to be putting on my Medium page pretty soon ways to talk to your legislator. All politics is local. We need to think of things. So one of the problems, for example, is they suddenly closed my doctor's office, and now 300 of us have no doctor. You don't have to think of a solution to that. You present that as a problem to your legislator. And the legislator is going to listen to you if he knows you represent a large voting bloc. Mm-hmm. So this is how you deal with, as Dr. Cheek pointed out, this it's not only out of control, it's getting worse. She's right. A few years ago, the federal government prosecuted 60 doctors in 1 year, real crooks, right? 60. But there were 600 doctors that gave in, plea bargained, gave up their license because they were terrorized. And the question to Congress is, how many of those 600 people were likely guilty? So you present that problem to Congress, say, look, seems like an awful lot of doctors are being raided. Are all these people guilty? And then maybe they'll go back and look through the trial records of people like Dr. Henson. Dr. Henson is a person I know and Dr. Cheek knows, nice guy, Navy doctor, missionary. So I read his indictment, and there were 7 or 8 people who were selling drugs that he prescribed without his knowledge. So now he's a drug trafficker? That would be like Bernie Madoff cheating a bunch of people, and then you arrest all the people that were conned. So the doctor gets conned and then gets arrested. This would be like a bookkeeper in a small business who's embezzling money. So you come and arrest everybody in the office. You should have known. That's what the DEA tells doctors. So when it gets this egregious, you have to go to Congress. You can't go to the DEA, and Linda's correct. You can't go to the DEA like through my rose-colored glasses. She's right. You can't go to them and sit down and say, you're making a big mistake. And they go, yeah, right. Thanks, Doc. You have to go to your legislators. And we need to get massive people out talking to their local legislators first. That means your state rep. Look it up on the internet. Who is my state rep? And then you put in your address, and it'll tell you. You call the office. They're very nice. You say, look, I got a serious problem with medical access. I can't get a doctor to take care of my painful disease. And I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or I have, interstitial cystitis. Always talk about your disease. And they're going to say, well, why can't you? And then you're going to say, well, my doctor quit. He's scared to death of the police. The pharmacies are all just denying me medicines and saying I'm a dope fiend. So you just tell the facts of the story. And then they may invite you to come in and talk to them. And you do, and you just stick to the facts of your story. You don't get hysterical. You just say, here's what's happened to me. I don't have medical access now because I have a painful disease that requires pain treatment. Cardiac disease requires cardiac treatment. Painful disease requires pain treatment. And I am being denied, period. And you let them figure it out. Then they'll ask questions. They'll do surveys. They have their own ways of investigating. So you start with your local state representative.
Dr. Kline, we have over 5 callers calling in right now. Do you want to start taking some right now? Or
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. Caller from area code 650. Welcome to the Doctor's Corner. What's your question for Dr. Kline?
Yes, I do. I called in a couple of weeks ago. I was about to meet with my Congresswoman's aide.
Mm-hmm.
I have met with her, and she's been very interested and helpful. I did what you're recommending. I talked about the people in my area who are having terrible problems finding pain doctors, and we all vote. So how does our Congresswoman plan to help us and to approach this? And she sent me the Times article that was published last week. I posted a comment about commenting on the HHS article, and the Times accepted my comment. So I'm hoping that will draw more comments to Dr. Singh's report. But we're still in trouble here in Northern California. My pain doctor has been raided for no good reason. He's probably going to retire. Another prominent pain doctor was raided at his home while he was on vacation, got back from vacation to find his front door wide open. They're running riot here. I spoke to at least 10 pain doctors between me and my doctor. 6 of them turned me down over the phone. 3 more turned me down in person. One was quite nasty and treated me like a drug addict. So that's kind of the report from Silicon Valley. I don't know what else to say. I may meet with other of my legislators.
Oh no, you keep it up. This we had a civil rights movement here. It took 30 years, to get human rights for people that we dragged here from another country and turn them into slaves. So don't give up. And the other thing you can do if you have friends is take 2 or 3 people to the office so they can hear more than one story. Always have a little one page only, bullet points. Here's my problem. Just like you just told me, all that could be on one page. Doctor rated, another doctor rated. Don't say whether you think they're innocent or not. You just put down doctor rated. Let the legislators look into this. And your little story about 10 people turning you down, one rude, you just put the problem on the lap of the legislators. And you got to start bringing up this 3 to 6% of voters, 3% for sure, that are on medicines round the clock, and another double that for the number of families and stuff. And these are people who vote. Pain patients vote.
Dr. Kline and Dr. Cheek, another thing people have said to me over this period of time, like especially Dr. Tennant's patients, that once their doctor was raided by the DEA, and whether or not they were convicted or not, now they are tagged or red flagged as a patient and have a hard time finding a new doctor because of this.
Okay, put that on the list. You put that on your one-page list of problems. Look, legislator, here's my problems. I'm in your district, and I have no access to treatment for my painful disease. Stay away from the words chronic pain and stay away from the word pain as much as you can, because those are trigger words. You say, my painful disease, I need treatment for this. Well, what kind of treatment? Well, I need pain medicines. Don't use the word opioids. I need pain medicines, because you know what? The word pain medicine covers everything.
Right.
everything. There's only two, opiate group and Tylenol. So, if they say, what do you mean? You can say, well, opiates and Tylenol, and I've tried Tylenol, it didn't work. So you present the problems to your local legislators. Now, if they think it's a federal issue, they're going to suggest to you that, why don't you go over here and talk to your U.S. representative, and maybe I can give you some direction. They're the experts. They know how politics works, but you have to convince them first. So your little one-page summary that they can pass around to their friends, just the facts, ma'am, no emotional language. You can put in there that I've lost function. I used to be able to have sex with my husband, and I can't now. I used to be able to get down and pick up my kid at the nursery school. I can't do that anymore. List these things, because I've got backup statistics too. People's lives are ruined. So don't just talk about the medicine. Talk about the fact that you've lost function as a result of losing your health care.
Dr. Cheek,
multiply that. Get other people to do it. Go in with a couple other people. It's always good to have 3 or 4 people, and everybody needs to be cautioned not to go on and on and on. I have sat with legislators and pain patients, and they just go on, and it ruins it. They're there to listen to facts. Give me the facts. Here's my little one-page summary with my bullet points. Here it is. This is what's happened to me, and this is what's happened to my life.
Dr. Cheek, did you have anything you wanted to add?
One of the things that I would say is the very important person to talk to is the health
staff person for especially federal. I don't know about the state, whether they have health staff, because I stick primarily to talking to the federal people, because that's where the legislators are failing in their responsibility to hold the Department of Justice accountable for their not following the law. We heard when Kavanaugh was up for being approved for the Senate, how many congressmen said that the legislature is no longer writing the laws, that they have basically handed over that responsibility to the agencies, and that's true. We see that, and the problem is, even though the Supreme Court has handed down multiple decisions that says that doctors treating patients are exempt from attack using the Controlled Substance Act, the lower courts continue to do it. The Department of Justice continues to charge it, and now the Supreme Court basically is turning a blind eye to it because everybody's making money at it. So health staff people are really important people to reach, because they're the ones that will accumulate the numbers, and then they give the information to the legislators. Legislators have got so much on their plate that if people try to call and talk to them directly, first off, for the most part, you can't even get an audience with your legislator without $1,000 or more in your pocket, or they've got to have multiple have we on Doctors of Courage are going to be starting a campaign amongst our members because I have lists of all the health staff for all 535 legislators to be able to give to the members of our organization, and they can speak for all of us, and they can say we as an organization, which again gives a little bit more bite to the comments, and can communicate with the legislators. Now, for someone who's not a member of Doctors of Courage, I am happy to always give you the health staff for your district and for your state, so you can get 3 names of the health staff and their phone numbers and their email addresses, and you can communicate with them regularly. So that's just a note to add to what Dr. Kline has said.
They will convince the senator or congressman. So you got to work up the chain. You got to go slowly. You got to be persistent. You want to gather as many as you can. If people cannot go in with you, get them to write a 1-page bullet point with their name and address on it, and just collect as many as you can of those. And then when you go in, you say, here's what I have to say, and here's what 20 other people have to say who couldn't make it today because they're home in bed in pain. The key thing is you are telling a story. and you have to tell a convincing story. And the best way to convince people is about what's happened to you as a result. If you don't like hog farmers and their ponds out back where they put all the manure in, you can say, this is harmful to me because I've been to the doctor 16 times with respiratory illnesses. So there's harm being done. Is there harm being done when they close down doctor's offices and you become a pariah? You put that in your report. My doctor closed down. I'm now a pariah. I can find no health care. Period. Next line. You put in the bullet points. Not some. I get these messages from people that are, the world's longest paragraphs, and I'm not going to read them. I don't have time. My eyeballs don't work right. I'm getting old, and, just little bullet points. And I got this advice from my son-in-law who used to work for a senator. So he kind of knows the skinny. He was a staffer, and he's the kind of people you go talk to. So it's time for massive visits with legislators. Do not give up. You've got to collect your little one-page stories, or you can make a little video. Those are good too. And try to get somebody maybe who's going to visit them to take those with them. Here's 16 videos, and here's a whole bunch of little one-page bullet points, and these represent 20 people. Remember, like Dr. Creek said, she represents X number of people. You never go into a legislator's office saying you're there by yourself. You go in there and you say, I represent 5% of the population in this state. 3% are on medicines, 2% are being cut off, and the other 3% are their advocates fighting for them because they're family and friends. That's a pretty good figure. It's probably higher, but I would stick to 5%. I represent 5% of voters. Pain patients vote. Pain patients vote. Mm-hmm. You have another caller?
Yes, caller from area code 203. What is your question for Dr. Kline and Dr. Cheek?
Yes, hi, it's Shirley calling.
Hi,
and
Shirley.
I'm very concerned because I have a meeting set up for April the 2nd to meet with my Attorney General in Connecticut and his Deputy Attorney General, my state representative, who I happen to be friends with, and she's happily arranging this for me. And I'm in a group, Connecticut Chronic Pain Patients, and I'm trying to gather everything that I can to bring with us. So I'm listening intently, trying to read what's on the screen and listen. I just need to have like a synopsis of what needs to be brought and how I need to prepare, because I don't want to get in there and start talking and crying because I'm in pain. I mean, I'm afraid to report my doctor because they'll cut me off.
Okay.
No, well, you need to say that, and always go with somebody else. If you get too teary or something, the person you're with can kind of pick up and talk for you. I think taking in a whole pile of papers, you tell everybody I want this on one page, bullet points. You take in a whole pile of those from different people in your state. I also, on Medium, if you go to Medium Refugee Kline, Kline, Medium Refugee Kline, or you go to my little website, thomasklinemd.com, you'll get this paper I wrote called Pain Refugee Crisis. And in it are some suggestions. It's a little long, but you can read it and get some ideas from it. It basically paints the picture of what's happened. Here's what's happened, and here are some suggestions for fixing it. And there's 4 major groups: doctors themselves, the police, the CDC, and I forget the other one, donut makers, I think. You can read that, and you can feel free to use it. I just put it out there for your general use. And that gives you the big picture. But the main picture is you telling your story, and with a bullet point sheet that you can hand out that summarizes what you're saying. And you can even read from it if you're nervous as kind of your notes. And then try to get as many people as you can to do the same thing. Tell me your story in one page. And bullet pointed so people can read it quickly. So good for you. I mean, that's very courageous to go But, you want to list the problems. Bam, you can't get a doctor for your painful disease. You don't have medical access. A lot of people don't have access for any part of their health care. I think that's a big issue. Some people don't even have primary care doctors. They've been kicked out of the practice. So, you get a broken arm or something or bad pneumonia. Well, nobody to go to. And I think, on your bullet points, you can say, here's how I was treated at a pharmacy and give a little example. When you've been humiliated, so good, that's very brave. And my email is Thomas Kline, Kline, MD, at Gmail. Feel free to email me, and I can see if I can help you out.
Next caller from area code 317. What is your question, and for Dr. Kline or Dr. Cheek? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, hi.
Yeah. Hi, did you say 317?
Yes, I did.
Oh, that's me. Okay, thank you. There was a beep, and I didn't hear the entire area code.
They're always beeping me, so I don't know.
Well, I am kind of in a panic. I'm trying to stay calm. These last few weeks, the last few months have been a nightmare because, I'm at 90 MME and they will not go above. So these last few months, the pain, of course, is increasing and increasing. My PCP finally referred me to another doctor, a rheumatologist, who she said would, prescribe above 90, she thought. Well, I go into him, and I spoke to you last week where he's the one that said the DEA came in to our city in Indiana, in Indianapolis, and he said, 6 months ago I would have done this, but I absolutely won't do it today. I will not go above 90. So
have you had that story verified about the DEA?
No.
Okay. Yeah. No. Okay. The best retort to that is that the CDC guidelines only apply to first-time users, and you're not a first-time user, and that the mandatory and guidelines are from the FDA. And you can look up on the FDA website for your particular drug and take a copy of it in there about the maximum dose and say, here's what the FDA has to say. They're in charge, and they say it's perfectly okay to go above 90. Where are you getting this? You're about to harm me. Are you sure this is right?
Well, I need to share the rest of the story.
Right.
He actually said, I will hand you a prescription today. This was on March 1st. He said, I will hand you a prescription today for 90 MME, and, you can call me in a month, and I'll give you another one until you can find another one. So he referred me to a pain clinic here in Indianapolis. So I called, or she called and said she had a referral. So I said, okay, I'm just going to be up front with you. I've been going through this for months, and I said, I wait a month or two to get in, and then you tell me you can't go over 90 MME. So I told her, I said, I need a doctor that will prescribe more than 90. I said, this is like taking a Tylenol. It's not getting me through the day. So she didn't say no. She said, okay. She said, well, you will have to see the doctor and talk to him. I said, I understand that, and it is at a pain clinic. This is my first pain clinic. And she said, fill out the papers and come and see us on the 20th of March, so that's next week. Okay, so I took that prescription to my pharmacist that I've been going to for 30 years, a different pharmacist, but same pharmacy, CVS, and I handed it to him, and he said, and it said I could fill it March 6th. And on March 1st, I was told by a clerk there, or by a tech at the pharmacy, I could fill my prescription from my PCP, which was pending, sitting there waiting. Well, I had taken all my opiates by the time I'd seen this guy on March 1st, assuming he was going to hand me a prescription above 90. So I was out. So I called, and I told him, this after I found out what couldn't be refilled. He said, no, it's the first time I've seen you. I will not give you over 90. So I go back and I call my PCP, and I said, I'm out. I said, this guy will not give me a prescription. Will you give me enough to get me through till March 6th? And she said, yes, I will give you 4 days worth. So we got that filled on that Friday. I got through, walked in the 6th. Then the pharmacist tells me, I can't fill this. And I said, why not? It's a different doctor, and it has different, he says to take 5 a day instead of 4. It was written different. So he said, he just was going to hand it back to me. And I said, no, I need you to fill this because I'm out. And he said, well, I have to call this doctor's office. And so he called the new doctor I went to that handed me the, new prescription because my PCP says she's not going to do it anymore. I don't know what he told this doctor's office, but they went ahead and filled it. I got a certified letter in the mail from the new doctor that said he'd write me 90 till I could get into this pain clinic. And a certified letter that I had to sign for saying, you broke my pain contract. I will never give you another opiate prescription.
Why did your PCP decline to prescribe medicine for you?
She said she can't go over 90 MME, and she wants me to get it from somebody else.
Well, why don't you be her advocate? Why don't you go in and say, look, can we have an informational visit? What is it that you're afraid of? And if she says, I'm afraid of if I'm afraid of the DEA, say, can I go over to the local DEA office and talk to them for you?
I actually handed her all your articles.
Oh, okay.
I printed out your articles. I wrote her a letter. I mailed all of her articles in because you said that they had to, put it in my medical file as long as I mailed it in, through the mail. And did that 3 days before my visit, and she refuses. And now this new guy says he's not going to prescribe for me anymore because of the pharmacist. He said, you broke my contract when you filled it with your PCP for 4 days.
Yeah, go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
You made a mistake, and now you're going to have to suffer for it. Your mistake was you assumed you would get a higher than 90 MME prescription from the second doctor, and you took more of the prescription that your PCP gave you. That's going to label you as a drug seeker and an addict in the pharmacist's eyes, in the doctor who gave you the second prescription's eyes, and in any future doctor that see. And it's probably going to be on the record of the doctor, the second doctor that you got this prescription for. So when you go to see your pain management doctor, the explanation you're going to have to give him is why you took extra and you ended up being short. That's where the problem lies. Now, these doctors are working with the understanding that anything that they do, they can be liable for criminal charges, and they can. There are doctors out there being charged criminally for writing 2 prescriptions of number 60 Lortabs. Okay, that is well under 90 MMEs. There is no magic to the number.
My PCP knew, but she knew I'd went to him. She knew I was holding a prescription from him. But the pharmacy tech told me, because, see, she won't give me X amount of days. She gives me X amount of days with some extra. So when I called in, because I had thrown my bottle away and put it in when I called in, and I've been on these for 15 years. I'm not a drug seeker. And they know it. I'm in there.
That's important.
Yeah.
Did you have an existing prescription that was cut off? In other words, did your PCP, was she prescribing you and then lowered the dose?
Yes. And
okay, now that's a complaint. Okay, that's a complaint to the medical board. Now, a lot of people are afraid to complain to the medical board, thinking the doctors will retaliate. Actually, that's not true. When the doctor gets a letter from the medical board, they start to pay attention to what they're doing, and the complaint to the medical board online, simple, write it ahead and cut and paste, that you were on this medication for 15 years and it was tapered under CDC guidelines that are voluntary And the FDA guidelines that are actually in charge of all this have no upper limit. Therefore, your doctor tapered you unprofessionally and illegally by adhering to a federal government cutoff of 90 milligrams. That is not proper or legal.
Actually, it has nothing to do with legality. A doctor's prescribing, and at least this is the way it was when I was in practice. I don't know if it's changed, but the doctor makes the decision. There's no way of a doctor's decision being determined as being legal or illegal based on what they think that they are going to feel prescribed to the patient. So, I mean, I just disagree with the terminology of saying that it's illegal action on the doctor's part.
No, you can just say the doctor was causing you harm by tapering you for no medical reason.
Well, yeah,
and then if
this pain clinic's not going to prescribe for me.
No, you got to go back and file a complaint. And what do you got to lose? You're screwed. You're not going to get any pain medicine from anybody. So and
I can't live. I don't want to live without it. I mean,
May I also say something? The problem is medical boards are hands of the DOJ. They are not. They are not a peer group association like were designed to be, where we are actually keeping track of our own people. They are actually the arm of the DOJ, having sat in on because medical boards will pick a doctor, or the government picks the doctor they're going to target, and then the medical board basically lays a paper trail against that doctor. And so, you can complain to the medical board, but they're really not interested in your benefit. They're really not interested in what's going to help you. They're more interested in what who the DOJ wants to attack in their state. So, well,
Linda, it depends. It depends on the boards too. There are some boards that are very friendly and some boards that are horrible. So, in other words, it won't hurt you to put in an online complaint. Now, the other thing is you got to go to a lawyer. So the lawyer is going to say, what am I supposed to do? You can say that you have been harmed, and then you give your functional losses by a physician's activity to purposely undertreat you, and the physician will have no defense. Because when it gets down to it...
the same as... Well, am I being undertreated? Is it considered being undertreated if 90 MME is not taking care of my pain?
Yes. The 90 MME is, you see, from a lawyer's standpoint, the 90 MME carries no weight. It's voluntary. The mandatory FDA rule is you treat anything you want. So you see, the doctor in court, what's the doctor going to say? Oh, the CDC said 90 milligrams, and then the lawyer says right here, doctor, it's voluntary. Why are you doing this? These are suggestions. Over here at the FDA, it says you can treat to any level that works. So why didn't you do that, doctor? Why didn't you treat to any? Oh, but the 90. No, doctor, we already discussed that. It's not a legal document. The CDC is not a legal document. This is when you get into legal stuff. They do not have the mandate.
How do I find a medical attorney? How do I find an attorney that will take my... I mean, I'm seriously considering this because...
Okay, well, what you always... It's like a general practitioner, primary care doctor like me. You try to go to a general lawyer. And if you don't have one, you find a nice lawyer that people talk about, and you go in and get a will written. And so you spend $300-400 to get a will. And now you got a lawyer, and you can go back to that lawyer. You're now a client. You're not a stranger, and you go back to them and say, look, and by the way, whenever you're talking to people, always bring it in on a single-page bullet point, because people aren't going to believe you if you just talk. They're going to start ignoring you because they don't believe you. So you got this. Everything that you're going to say is on your little one-page bullet point sheet. And, if you want, you can have the lawyer call me because I've got the medical part of it. And I can tell you that doctors have no defense against creating harm. Now, lawyers think of harm as money. So if you've had any harm that you've had to spend money, lose money, quit your job, whatever, that's important.
And I am disabled by the federal government for my disease.
Oh, well, you see, you need to go to the American Civil Liberties Union and tell them that you're being discriminated against. You can try that, too.
I wondered about the ACLU, if they would.
Well, they've been shying away from all this, but it's the local offices. You need to show there's a constitutional issue. Constitutional issue is, that you're being discriminated against because you're protected by ADA, and you're in a protected class, and that means if people are discriminating against you, like your doctor or like the pharmacist, they have to prove they're not discriminating against you. But remember, the ACLU is looking for big constitutional cases. Lawyers are looking for cases they can make money. So think hard about how this is impacting you financially. It's about dollars. That's the first thing they're going to ask. Okay, you've had harm. Tell me about your harm. Well, I can't sleep. Well, that's not harm that they're interested in. Well, I can't, I have to hire somebody to go get my grandson. I can't drive anymore. That's harm. You're paying money. If you're not paying any money, you can still try for negligence, because this is negligent practice. Under treatment is negligent practice. See, that's why you got to use the word under treatment. It's negligent practice. It is never appropriate practice to undertreat anybody for anything. Oh, you got a sore throat here. Why don't you have 10 milligrams of penicillin here? I think it'll work just as good. Oh, you have cancer? Well, we're just going to give you half the dose. What the heck? It's expensive, and I'm afraid I'll get into trouble. So think about your bullet points. In other words, that's your pitching. Pitching means you're trying to sell an idea. You're pitching to the lawyer. So work it out ahead of time on your little one-pager and think about it. Get people to help you, because a lot of times you don't see things. Like somebody will say, well, gee whiz, don't you realize you get, you've lost money because you have to do this and that. And, loss of consort, loss of the ability to make love to your spouse or loved one, all of that you can list, but they're going to look for the stuff that's got the money attached to it. So you got to do a pitch, one-pagers. But hang in there. You're in a terrible boat, and you're in the same.
His nurses are the ones, and I sent him a certified letter back and said, I had no idea I was doing anything wrong. Your nurses actually told me, because they didn't let me talk to him. They just went.
No, this is no. I got to cut you. This is too defensive. Go on the offensive. Don't be defensive. Don't go in there and say, I didn't do anything wrong. You go in there and say, the doctor did something wrong. He's not treating me properly. He's under-treating my disease. And always talk about your disease, whatever it is. I have this disease, and it's not being treated properly, and I'm harmed as a result, and here's my list of things where I've been harmed. So, but thanks for sharing, because I understand what a terrible position you're in, and there's a lot of other people out there. And remember the numbers: 5%. Thanks for calling. I appreciate it.
Thank you for calling. All right, we have another caller. Caller from area code 845. What is your question for Dr. Kline and Dr. Cheek?
Yes, I was at work on Saturday up at Turnstone Casino, and I was sitting down before work speaking with a doctor from the New York State Athletic Commission and a doctor from over in the UK who worked with the promoter. And we were discussing, the opioid crisis here and the lack of, pain care for patients. And, the doctor from the UK was explaining to me that over there, they're astounded at how many people are committing suicide, and yet it's still being ignored. And he brought up something that was interesting, and I discussed it with my wife, who was an attorney, and I just wanted to get your opinion on that. He mentioned to me about the 1961 Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs and the countries that were involved in it, which also includes the United States. And, and in that, all those, more or less, it was not a law in the books, but how she would explain it like a blue law, was, it states not only, are they obligated to addressing the control of illicit narcotics, but they're obligated toward universal access of narcotic drugs necessary to alleviate pain and suffering. And it stresses in there, despite sociological circumstances. Now, again, like I stated, my wife says that, that's more or less one of those things that, are blue law, one of those laws that were made 75, 100 years ago. They're absurd. They really don't hold any weight anymore. But when I listen and I speak, and when I listen to people, including tonight, talking about, lawsuits and moral grounds to stand on with the DEA and the courts, is this something that you believe that if somebody was able to and they got the right attorney, they'd be able to use that as some sort of leverage in this situation?
Yeah, attorneys go back hundreds of years. They'll drag cases up from the 1600s. 1215 was the Magna Carta that states that there should be peer review. So, no, and that's the 1961 convention?
Yeah, 1961 single convention, narcotic drugs, that was, when you do research on it, that's when really, heroin and stuff was starting to surface, not only in this country, but in a lot of countries. And that was also when they started, more or less from what I understand, producing, the synthetic opioids for pain. So they were trying to, figure out some way to balance, not only the trafficking of drugs and the plague on society, but making sure that, that the medical use of the synthetic opioids, didn't get out of control.
No, that's a perfectly, I'll look that up because that can be kept on the shelf for all kinds of arguments. It may not be the argument with your local attorney, but it certainly can be an argument when you go to Congress and say, look, we signed this convention and, so the good tip. Thank you.
Yeah, and I believe when you go on to, you look for it, it actually has a list of all the countries that participated in that. So I was just, curious if you guys knew.
I don't know anything about it, but I'm going to look it up. Yeah. Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
All right. We have another call. A caller from area code... Is that it? Oh, no. 816. What is your name and what's your question for Dr. Kline?
Yeah. Excuse me. This is Aaron Sills. And I wanted to say that, first of all, your hashtag paying patients vote, I think that's a fabulous idea. My concern, though, is the level of division in our country. How do you think that we can unite and become an effective agent of change and influence during the 2020 election, especially if our candidates are going to accept dark money, corporate contributions, and PACs? Now we have Trump, and we can look at the policy of his administration, his appointments.
No, we don't want to get into politics. Do you have a specific question for us?
Well, yeah, I guess, how do you think that we can, our community can unite and become more effective politically?
Well, it's one voter at a time and one vote at a time. People need to call in. If they're too sick, say, look, can I just have a phone conversation with you? I'm going to fax you over my one-page bullet point, or I'll email it to you. That's how politics works. That's how change works. It works in Congress. So I would advise you to get as many of your friends together and start contacting your legislators along with your one-page bullet point. Don't just call them. Then they got to take notes. That's kind of rude. Send in the information with you. But thanks for calling. I appreciate it.
So we have a lot of people asking about Dr. Steve Henson and what's going on with that. If you guys wanted to talk a little bit about that, maybe.
I'm happy to.
It's kind of a long topic, and we're already 25 minutes over. Maybe we can talk about that next week, and Dr. Cheek can provide some input next week. How about that?
Okay. That should be okay. We're headed to Durham tomorrow for my husband's surgery on his eyes, and next week he has to be laying face down on a massage table 24/7. So,
oh dear.
Yeah. But I mean, if all goes well, I should be available because obviously I have nothing to do but sit and take care of Bill.
Yeah, and it is an extremely egregious case, and that's worth people knowing about, because these things just get buried in a newspaper article that sounds like they've got some dope fiend they've locked up, and that's not the case. Because Linda and I both know Dr. Henson, and we know him well enough to be able to speak truthfully about what happened to him. So we will save that for a future show.
Okay.
Tune in next week.
All right.
All right.
Great.
Sounds good.
Linda, did you have any last words, or did you want to share anything before we get going here?
Basically, I just want to say kind of an overview of the kind of comments that have been coming in, and is that this is a reflection of the seriousness of the problem, that basically through government overreach, through illegal government overreach into the medical office, which is completely out of federal jurisdiction, we have completely destroyed our doctor-patient relationships. That patients like the lady who is now looking at suing her doctor for malpractice because of the drop in the medicines, which of course was bad, but you have to consider that doctors are caught between a rock and a hard place, and they're trying to still do the job that they can do, but they are definitely, every doctor in this country is under the threat of being attacked, if not for prescribing pain medicine. Now the government has now found out that they can attack just about anybody for Medicare fraud, and they're going after people for, now they're going after pain doctors, for example, for just doing a urine drug screen, which is part of the making the correct steps to ensure that a patient is doing things right. So, I mean, we're caught between a rock and a hard place, and the government has caused this, and we need to make the government be responsible for their own actions. I guess that's kind of the sum I would like to have.
Okay.
Here.
Yeah.
Dr. Kline, do you have anything you want to add before we get going?
No, I've got to get to my donuts.
All right. Well, I want to thank you, Dr. Kline, and Dr. Linda Cheek for joining us this evening on the Doctor's Corner. If people are interested in finding out more information about what Dr. Cheek does, you could go to www.doctorsofcourage.org. And yeah. Okay.
And that's not just for doctors. That's the only reason why I gave it that title, was I was trying to come up with a real snappy little acronym for the website so that people would remember it. And I thought, okay, DOC, and then I came up with Doctors of Courage. It has nothing to do with only for doctors. A lot of pain patients think, oh, well, we can't be a part of that because it's for doctors. It's not. It's doctors and pain, basically.
Yeah.
Anything involving pain. So we welcome pain patients, we welcome doctors, we welcome anybody out there that that is just interested in stopping this government overreach into our care.
Okay. And what's your other
one of the very first tweets that I put was, doctors and patients need to work together on this together.
Yes.
And so, every once in a while you got to sue your doctor, but it's always nice to go in and say, look, what are you afraid of? What can I do to help you? We need to work on this together. Sometimes it works, and sometimes you just have doctors that are so frightened they don't want to hear it. But you can always start off with that. Linda's right. You can, you may have to sue somebody, but always start off with the diplomacy, and then you can get out the big guns, So, thank you.
On the homepage of Doctors of Courage, there's a pamphlet that anybody can simply copy and print off and take to every doctor, pediatrician, family practice, pain management, every doctor in the area that can print off that pamphlet and take them in so that at least they can become educated on what they can do about this problem.
Thank you for joining us.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Cod360 Network wanted to wish all those that have lost a loved one due to the undertreatment of pain within the chronic pain community. Rest in peace to Carla Denise Howard, Dawn Anderson, Hannah King, Sonia White, Rory Hosking. These people have passed in the last 10 days. Thoughts and prayers go out to all the family and loved ones because of the so-called opioid crisis. And a big thank you to our audience for taking some time out of your evening to join us here at the Doctor's Corner. I'm Jonelle Elgaway with Dr. Kline, signing off until next Tuesday. Have a great evening, Call Nation.
This has been The Doctor's Corner with Dr. Kline and Jonelle Elgaway. Copyright 2018. All rights reserved.